You're listening to the Today in Manufacturing podcast.
Five biggest stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry moving forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. Finally, if you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Anna, Ben, or David at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. We're also live every week at 1:30 on some day. Subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine to get a notification. Anna, not live on Thursday this week because of just so many things going on.
Yeah, there was a lot of snow that kind of got in our way yesterday, which in Wisconsin, we try to not let that happen, but it did.
Yeah, normally we persevere. But see, I thought I was going to throw it. I thought I was going to be the monkey with the wrench, you know, because I had the red eye. I just had so many moving parts to get me here by 1:30. And the fact that all of them went right in order to get here, and then it was snow. So, you know, around 1:30 yesterday, I was stranded on an interstate. Ben, thanks again for joining us. Are you excited for your first episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast?
Yeah, I mean, very excited. This is great, and I'm happy to be here.
Those are all believable thoughts.
Yeah, it really rings true,
Yeah,
Ben. Okay.
I want to come across as genuine. This is fun.
All right, he is going to call it how he sees it today. But before we get started, we have a word from our sponsor, Unit 202 Productions.
If you aren't creating video content for your business, you're missing out. Why is video so important? Increase conversions, increase email marketing click-through rates, improve SEO, build trust, help explain complex subjects and equipment, and improve social media engagement. How many of you view video content on a daily basis? Isn't it time people start viewing some of yours? Promote your brand with Unit 202. Let's get to work.
And we're back. And before we get to our first story, just a reminder that if you want more information on Unit 202 Productions, just click the link below in the live chat, or you can click the link down in the body copy. Our first story this week, another solar EV startup on life support. Three friends founded Sono Motors in 2016. The German automotive startup gained attention with the prospect of bringing a mid-sized solar EV crossover to the market. The Scion had an eye-catching price point of about $29,900 and a 189-mile range. Unfortunately, the company is fighting for its life and trying to stay afloat using a crowdfunding-style campaign that asks people to pay up front or kind of just give what they can. On January 26, 2023, Sono extended the hashtag Save Scion campaign until February 28th because talks with potential investors have been promising. As of this story, as of this podcast, the campaign has raised $52.4 million, but its goal is a lofty $112 million. The effort may sound risky, but the company hopes the numbers will sway investors. The company has more than 44,000 total reservations, 3,500 of them fully paid, more than 21,000 private reservations that have deposits, and some 22,000 non-binding B2B pre-orders. The reservations and pre-orders are the equivalent to net sales of about $1 billion if every sale goes through. Ben, on the hashtag Save Scion page, the company pleads, the future is worth fighting for. Does this company have a future?
Yeah, I think it could. If the response is what they are hoping for, then it could kind of sway things. But it seems like confidence in solar-powered EVs is maybe a little bit low right now, considering Lightyear, which is another solar-powered EV maker based in Europe, just declared bankruptcy. But the Scion seems like a much more reasonably or an affordable option compared to what Lightyear was putting forth. And so it just seems like something that could generate a little bit more of a crowd response.
Okay. When you saw the Scion, you know, is it something you would drive?
Yeah, we actually ran something on their crash test.
Yeah.
And it looked like the unliving crash test dummy lived.
Yes.
Which is a big one for me with any vehicle. I want to live. So.
Yeah. No, that is that's the first
outcome.
safety feature I look for is will I live? Anna, your thoughts on Save Scion's sort of creative attempt to keep the company going?
So my first question is this. If everyone gets their money back, if they don't get these cars produced and can sell them to them in the end, where do they get the money if they spend it all on making the cars?
Well, no, so they're not taking any of the money now. If they make it to, so you're saying if they hit 112 million, but things still fall through and they can't make the cars and they've already cashed the checks.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a little risky. It's like a really high stakes Kickstarter because this happens all the time on Kickstarter where a campaign is fully funded, but they run into problems with manufacturing. It actually happens a lot with 3D printers, particularly on Kickstarter, because a lot of these are startups that don't know how to run a manufacturing business, don't know much about production. They get all of the funds and they're like, yeah, we were way short.
Right. And if you were to file for bankruptcy, for example, I don't know what the rules are around, like, are these people considered creditors in, you know, in that sense, since it's sort of this, I don't know, unorthodox source of funding. I don't know if anybody knows.
I think they are, but I think this might be different because some people are putting up pretty substantial sums of money. Whereas in Kickstarter, when the company goes under, it's, you know, if you paid for a $500 printer, you might just be out.
Sorry. Yeah. You know, the CEO of the company used the phrase, change is always possible if we take matters into our own hands. I thought that was a very cool statement. I appreciate his optimism and enthusiasm. I think it's cool that they're trying to pivot and make this work still. Although I will say that in automotive, the deck is really stacked against you, especially as we discussed last week, when it comes to something like this, that's a super untested technology.
Yeah.
If you look at how many like hard costs any automaker has, and then you add to it the fact that this is just all R&D and so much testing, it's really expensive to put this out, right? There's no scale. There's just no cost savings really in place whatsoever to help them kind of get a boost here. And that doesn't really change. You know, even though they're scrambling to try to make it work, none of that changes, right? They just need more money.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happens next. You know, with Lightyear, we talked about their bankruptcy filing, and what would happen next with this Sono story. You know, I just, it made me start to think, so I want it to work, right? We talked about this last week. I think the idea of a solar car is very cool. I like the idea of like taking out the middleman and putting the energy source right on the vehicle. That's awesome, right? There's no utility there. It's just, you don't have to deal with the traditional charging structures as much. Yeah.
And the solar charging is the body.
Right, exactly. So that's very cool. But at the same time, I don't know, right now in automotive, there's so much going on. There's a ton of competition around alternative energy sources for vehicles. Obviously, EVs are kind of the big thing going forward. And it just made me think, when something like this appears as a bit of a novelty, when you consider that you can already power an EV with solar power if you want to, like I could do that right now.
Yeah.
I think there's, again, back to this hurdle of R&D and production. In order to start selling these, there's got to be also a lot of money put towards marketing that message as to why you need to have the solar panels on the car.
Right.
Why you can't just have them on your house and plug in your EV and charge that way.
Yeah.
And obviously they have a story to tell about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think anyone knows it. So in order to get past the nicheness of this product and make it more universal appeal to other people, they need to understand why a solar car is necessary.
Yeah.
And I don't think that message is really out there yet either. So add to that, you have this stack of challenges, add that to it, and how much marketing dollars that's going to take also. Yeah. And it really does make it look difficult for how this is going to work at this stage, No,
I think when they first launched the campaign, there was a lot of interest. I had mentioned there at what, $52.4 million raised already. But that was raised kind of right out of the gate. You saw how niche it was because everybody that was interested kind of jumped in right away. But even in the last 4 days, the needle really hasn't moved. So maybe interest has topped out, and maybe while it was looking really good at the beginning of the campaign, when you try to close, I mean, they're not even half of the way towards their goal, and it doesn't look like it's moving there. But I will say, if you're going to take a chance, the price point is something where, maybe I could take a chance for that. For $29,900, it's something where if I saw the technology proven out a little bit more, I'd be willing to take a chance. However, we can't because sales were scheduled to begin in Europe later this year, and the car is not going to be seen on U.S. roads anytime soon. It won't even be available. You can't even buy it if you're based in the U.S. It actually says on their website, you need to find a broker overseas to buy it for you and then figure out how it's going to get to you. I understand that there's regulatory restrictions there, but I think that there would be major interest in the U.S. that might help them get over the hump.
It kind of feels like for people that haven't switched over to an EV yet, one of the biggest considerations is logistics. Like how much am I going to have to change in my daily routine in order to drive an EV? And a lot of that depends on where you live or what type of EV it is. But this feels like just kind of skipping that step and going directly into something totally new. And I mean, a solar EV, that just seems like it could pose some logistical challenges. I'm thinking about January here, where we saw the sun maybe for 4 total hours.
Not a lot.
No, it was, I was excited to be in Anaheim and see the sun again, be reunited. So the company hasn't stopped testing. We yesterday posted some of the test footage from some of these recent crash tests, and I was really encouraged by some of it. In particular, the solar panels behaved as predicted because solar panels can be very delicate. And but so when you slam them into a concrete structure at what was it going 70 miles an hour?
I think so, yeah.
There was no splintering of the panels, so no additional risks to passengers or other people on the road. That was something I found encouraging from a safety perspective. And it all comes down to the company's proprietary polymer-based vehicle integrated solar technology, which covers the entire vehicle's body. It's just really cool. So pre-sales production is still planned for the summer, but I guess we'll see and maybe don't hold our breath.
Yeah.
All right. Our next most popular story this week. SpaceX launched a Tesla into space 5 years ago. It has been 5 years since SpaceX sent Elon Musk's red Tesla Roadster into space aboard its Falcon Heavy rocket. At the time, the Falcon Heavy was packing 3 boosters and 27 engines, making it one of the most powerful rockets to ever launch. The rocket was capable of delivering 37,000 pounds of cargo to Mars, but for its first flight, it carried a relatively light and sporty electric vehicle. But many people want to know, where is that Roadster now? WhereIsRoadster.com has been tracking the approximate trajectory of the vehicle and puts the Roadster at about 203 million miles from Earth and heading in an orbit back toward Earth at a speed of 6,816 miles per hour. The Roadster has traveled about 2.5 billion miles through space, mostly in a peaceful vacuum. In 2020, the car did get within 5 million miles of Mars. So, pretty close.
Yeah.
The Roadster, which hopefully still has Starman behind the wheel, has racked up many other interesting milestones. And we got to understand that Starman is, I believe, SpaceX mascot that is driving this thing through space. The car has exceeded its 36,000-mile warranty more than 70,000 times. The website also estimates that if the Roadster's battery was still working, Starman would have listened to Space Oddity and Life on Mars by David Bowie more than 1.16 million times combined. The songs were playing in Starman's headphones, and I don't care how big of a Bowie fan you are, that's a lot of Bowie. At the time, Musk tweeted, "Red car for a red planet." Ben, it was just a simpler time back then.
Yeah, it was.
A simpler Musk.
Yeah, I should start by just saying I think it's really cool to shoot a car into space.
Yeah.
I think it's just neat.
Yeah.
That's fun.
If you want to do a good marketing gimmick, shoot something into space and I'm all over it.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it was great. It was great then and it's still great. And, you know, Elon Musk has become sort of a polarizing figure. So it's nice to think back to this type of fun and harmless attention-grabbing stuff that he used to do.
Yeah.
You know, maybe if he has some sentimental attachment to the Roadster, that adds a layer to it. Maybe he thinks about it wistfully. You know?
Yeah, that's true.
Pictures it drifting through space.
At those high-stress times at Twitter, he's like, you know, I wonder where my car is right now.
That's how he falls asleep, his 1 hour of sleep per night.
Yeah.
I was just thinking of that Roadster.
But I think pretty shortly after it happened, there was already talk about, like, this may not last very long out there. Mm-hmm. It's a small convertible, I think, right?
Yeah. In
space. So maybe it's not built for this type of environment.
Yeah.
So there may not be a whole lot left of the Roadster at this point. I think it was the Drive. Last year, they spoke with Anthony Wass. He's the chair of aerospace engineering program at the University of Michigan.
Okay.
And he said there's a lot of effects to take into account, like temperature, fluctuating gravity, radiation, and pressure. And they've likely all, you know, had a significant effect on the car.
Yeah.
And the major changes in temperature, I think, are what make the car parts expand and contract a lot, much more than they would on Earth. Mm-hmm. And so it's likely that a lot of pieces have come loose. Plus that wide range in temperature is probably not doing any favors to the paint job.
Yeah.
So there's a good chance the Roadster isn't even red anymore.
Okay.
Which is sort of a bummer because it was red car for a red planet.
Yeah.
And who knows?
So if the car and the paint are gone, what are the chances Starman's still doing well?
I think he's doing all right. I mean, as far as I understand, he's just wearing a spacesuit, right? Which is designed for that sort of thing.
Okay.
He's not going to last forever, but who knows? Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just, when it comes back, it's just going to be Starman strapped into a seat. Just everything else is gone. And definitely the headphones are gone.
Yeah.
Anna, what we're, we'd talked about this a couple of times before because it's a really interesting campaign to get people interested in space. Is this just, a waste of time, or, is there a little bit of just innocent fun with something like this?
I don't know. I'm going to take the wet blanket counterpoint on this and just say that I don't think it's that fun. I think it's sort of like...
Are you going waste of resources, wet blanket?
A couple ways. I'll take you down the whole path. It's going to be super wet.
Big,
just
big
a
blanket,
huge blanket.
wet.
Yeah. I don't know. To me, it just felt like, one of those projects where it's under the guise of research, but it's really just ego. I mean, that wouldn't surprise anyone, right? Coming from Elon Musk, but why is this a scientific necessity in any way at this time? I don't know. I also feel personally that we're a little bit remiss about what we launch into space just casually, not knowing what the consequences of that are. I mean, it's like a uniquely human thing to, and maybe American specifically, to just say oh, probably not going to be a problem, or, you know, what are the chances that X, Y, or Z happens? But like, we are dealing with the consequences of that in so many ways right now.
Are you talking about the ever-growing orbit of space trash circling Earth right now?
I am. It's like, you know, it's like the Great Pacific Garbage Patch of the sky. Like, there's just so much trash in space now. People, every country is doing it, right? Just leaving their junk wherever. But like, you know, there have been some near misses. You know, we send these scientists into space. We ask them to risk their lives in the name of research. And then sometimes they're in kind of dangerous scenarios because of the stuff that is floating around.
Yeah.
So to me, that was like, I don't know. I just don't see like the need, I guess, to justify this experiment. I didn't see the justification of it really. I know that they presented as this sort of vague, like, how would this battery function in space, or how would these metals function in space? But we don't really know. You know, I don't think that maybe it's interesting to know how long that battery lasts, but we don't know if it's still working.
We will one day.
To me, it felt like Elon Musk's Tesla marketing, like, at his best.
Yeah, it was great marketing.
I could see that, but the rocket was going up either way, right?
Right.
Yes, and he just put it on.
Yeah. But like, he didn't have to put a car on it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, like, to me, it's like he could buy a commercial during the Super Bowl, or he could launch a car into space and claim 5 years later that the battery still works. We have no way of knowing. I don't know. It just, like, to me, it's unnecessary. But I usually take this position on this kind of stuff that, like, there's so many problems on Earth to solve. Right. And I know that that's not an apples to apples way of looking at it necessarily. So maybe that's not fair. I will acknowledge that. Yeah. But I don't know. Can we solve some other problems first? And
you know, Starman, right? The beloved mascot. He was listening to two David Bowie songs simultaneously. Yeah. One in each side of his headphones. Yeah. And I just wonder why. Why not just pick one? Yeah. Like, why are we doing this to Starman?
Because like the two like biggest people on the project each had one that they wanted, and they just couldn't come to a compromise, and this was it.
That's sick.
Or why does he have to wear headphones? Like, there's no one else in the car. Yeah. There's no one else in space.
I think
it could be.
Why can't he just crank it up? Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I think that we should also, if you look at it in a different perspective, this was 5 years ago. Everything was going great economically. Space travel towards Mars was more aggressive than it's been in a very long time. And, you know, everything has kind of hit a huge roadblock with the global pandemic, because I think, and a lot of the reason you have that perspective of, you know, we got a lot of problems here on Earth. I mean, maybe we weren't always, maybe that wasn't the first thing in our mind 5 years ago when this was going on. Like, because it seemed like we were solving a lot of problems, and we were looking for the next place that we were going to not necessarily colonize, but maybe get rare materials from. I don't know. I'm still very interested in our effort to go to and try to not only visit but colonize Mars. But I understand why that's taken a backseat. Yeah, and I've always looked at it this way, I guess. But you know, I support some light space exploration and all that stuff. But to talk space exploration, well, no, I mean, like to spend a ton of resources and brain power on talk of colonizing Mars because we have a dying planet that we could actually fix, but we're not. We're sending people to Mars. That I just do not agree with. I think that there's enough that we got to do here to fix the problems that we've caused here versus being like, let's come up with a plan B. What's really going to be a pain is when we finally figure out how to make Martian colonization happen, but we're unable to navigate our space trash to get there. Right. It just like we can't leave our dead planet because of all of our garbage in the sky. Yep, and then you're going to see that car. We just get T-boned by the roadster on the way out. Did anyone else hear Bowie? Yeah. Boom. Mission ruined. A couple of other interesting facts real quick from where'stheroadster.com. The car gets about 2 miles closer to Earth every second. The vehicle has traveled far enough to drive around the world's roads 6 63.2 times. That is every road in the world. And it wasn't interesting enough for me to seek it out, but they even made a comic book series, The Adventures of Starman. But in this comic book series, is he just in the car? Like in issue 2, he listens to Life on Mars. And then issue 3, all Space Oddity.
Yeah, you need to have a villain in a comic book. What do you like? So who does he encounter?
It's just a real exercise in patience.
Just
Yeah, Starman's actually a real human who had a falling out at SpaceX, and we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out when he comes back. Hoping he's just a crash test dummy. All right. Well, our next most popular story: Ford fourth quarter profit drops 90%. Last week, Ford Motor said its fourth quarter net income fell 90% from the previous year. Now, officials at the automaker say costs are too high and have promised more belt tightening this year. The company is transforming its product development, manufacturing, and supply chain management to reduce costs. At the same time, it's shifting to electric vehicles. CEO Jim Farley says the company left $2 billion in profits on the table that were within its control. The global shortage of computer chips and other parts hit Ford hard at the end of last year, costing it production of roughly 100,000 vehicles that could have been sold. CFO John Lawler said the company's cost structure isn't competitive and quality is lacking. Now, more white-collar layoffs are coming, and the company needs to cut manufacturing and warranty costs. Lawler says about $1 billion of the $2 billion in lost profits were due to lower production and lost sales. The other $1 billion was in operational costs. He attributed about 60% of the production problem to the chip shortage, with the rest coming from part suppliers who had trouble ramping up factories. He said it's something that we need to do a better job managing through, and saying that it is a hand-to-hand combat problem securing chips. That's a grim outlook. To fix the problem, Ford's going to work with chip suppliers and brokers, as well as redesign car computers to use different chips that are more abundant. Ford expects to see a mild recession in the U.S. this year and a moderate one in Europe. But on the bright side, for consumers anyways, the company sees vehicle prices falling about 5% this year. Anna, it's a really interesting picture to paint with hand-to-hand combat securing chips. Does this happen, at the doorstep of the chip maker, or is this some arena that they have inside?
Yeah, there's they invite spectators, and it's
Yeah. You wanna place an order? Get in the cage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the entire earnings report and subsequent coverage thereof has been a lot of drama, I think, from Ford's executive team. You quoted Lawler, but Jim Farley, the CEO, has been losing it for like a week. One auto news outlet harshly described it as a tantrum, but I thought that was like maybe a little bit accurate after this earnings showed the profit challenges. And they pointed out, and I agree, that he seems to be far too angry and victimized for being the CEO and maybe perhaps having some control over this. Like when he said, we lost all these profits for issues that were within our control, like, oh,
you're the guy behind the controls, man.
Right. Like, what are you doing then?
Yeah.
To quote Farley, he said, "To say I'm frustrated is an understatement because the year could have been so much more for us at Ford. We have deeply entrenched issues in our industrial system that have proven tough to root out. Candidly, the strength of our products and revenue has masked this dysfunctionality for a long time," unquote. Mm-hmm. One of the things that Farley mentioned this week, and you alluded to this as well, is layoffs. He said that Ford is operating with what he says is an engineering staff that's 25% larger than any of its key competitors. Mm-hmm. He says that
that's
he can't.
That's a big number.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And he said that, they can't continue to operate at this type of disadvantage. He didn't say specifically that that's where the layoffs would be, but clearly some foreshadowing, I think, in play there. I guess I'm a little concerned about the timing of any type of engineering cut, if that's what takes place when the company is in the process of this major upheaval in terms of technological platforms. And so you hope that if this is the outcome, that it doesn't create some gaps in performance, safety, efficiency, as Ford tries to continue to enhance its EV lines, batteries, other equipment. And keep in mind, and we talked about this last week, but they just came off an announcement where they had matched Tesla in cutting price on their new EVs.
Did you see how Tesla just did them so dirty? Tesla cut back on prices. Ford matches with the Mustang, and then this week Tesla's like, yeah, never mind. Undid all of those price cuts.
Well, and Ford is, of course, free to do that as well. But
next week's news today.
I just, they want to be viewed as a peer to Tesla, right? That's clear. They want to be a huge EV player. They put all their eggs in this basket. This is what they're going to do. They've also just partnered with Red Bull Racing to get back into Formula One. They said they're going to create a brand new hybrid powertrain for that. They're going to use the developments that they generate out of this partnership to help drive development in consumer vehicles as well. They have a lot going on right now that requires a lot of engineering. And so I guess I am concerned that they could compromise those ambitions if they do truly proceed with, Farley in this blind rage cutting engineers, which I don't know is going to happen, but that's what it feels like he's alluding to. And that's a little bit concerning for me.
Is he going for, is he trying to get sympathy from people? Like, hey, we're trying, it just seems like normally a leader would still show his position of strength rather than just being like, shucks, everything went bad for us.
I thought it was a confusing play also. And Jim Farley's worked at Ford for a long time. I mean, he took over the CEO role like within the last 2 years, but he's not new to the company. So to say that, or to make it sound like, he's just finding out that there's this dysfunction and what can be done about it. Well, you are the CEO, so figure something out.
We lost $2 billion. They can't all be winners. To the next quarter, call over. Ben, it has to be difficult for Ford because the company is really transitioning towards EV production and development. And it's not simply, it's not simple to just completely change strategy and keep everything working in order.
Right. I mean, they're fairly early in the transition. They've already had some success, seemingly, with the Ford F-150 Lightning and the Mach-E. I mean, those are two models that are, they seem fairly well known, or they're notable in a landscape where it's hard to kind of, off the top of your head, rattle off a bunch of EV models.
Yeah, and they have, existing sales going out 2 years.
Yeah, but he's apparently Farley, they're already deep in the development of their second generation of EVs, is what he said during the company's earnings call. And he's already talking about the next electric full-size pickup, which he said, by the way, is awesome.
See, there you go.
Awesome.
That's that general CEO, chutzpah that I want.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, that hints that maybe he's seen it, because how could he say it was awesome if he hasn't? But besides that, he was just kind of offering up some vague updates about what to expect. He's talking about making the next round of EVs fully software upgradable, and that means a brand new electric architecture, and that it's going to be radically simplified. He said, imagine 3 body styles, each with volume potential of up to 1 million units, and just a handful of orderable, that's a tough word, I'm sorry, orderable combinations. So they're talking about simplifying the process, and that should help ramp up production, one would think.
Yeah, well, and that's, we've heard that from a lot of automakers, where you're going to have less vehicle make and model options, maybe more model or options inside the vehicle. I'm also interested to see how many of those will be subscription models. Hey, what was the car maker that wanted us to subscribe to electric windows?
Yeah, Mercedes, VW, I think there's a few of them.
So of this $2 billion net loss in 2022, I think if you looked a little bit more about what happened, an investment in Rivian dropped $7.4 billion because the stock dropped out of it. The company also had a $2.7 billion drop in its stake with the autonomous vehicle unit Argo AI, which was disbanded last year. So if you just point to those, there are very simple reasons why there were like huge losses. Just like, Argo AI, we're trying to get the autonomous car. This just isn't working out. We got to take a different direction. And then, I mean, that looks more like an R&D sort of loss. Ford sales in the U.S., which is its most profitable market, dropped 5% during the fourth quarter because of the part shortages that hit every other automaker. But as we've talked a lot about on the podcast, prices for vehicles have been insane. It's like one of those conversations you're going to have with friends at a party, or at dinner. So, how are things? Well, still have the car that I've had for 15 years, but waiting for things to cool. Or, like some of our colleagues, maybe we just might not see them again until it starts to cool. So the customers paid an average of $56,143 for company vehicles in Q4 last year, which is 10% more than they paid last year. That's according to Edmunds.com. Many of those sales were high-end trucks and SUVs. So I think that maybe Farley changes tone a little bit going forward, and maybe this could be the bottom. I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens in Q1. Any expectations there? Any predictions? Sadder, Farley?
I never would. No, I'll wait and see.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, like reading some of the quotes from the presentation, though, I'm definitely going to try to be on that next call. Because either it's going to be elation or even worse. Just like the drama.
The drama.
Yeah, hopefully the comparisons with the first quarter are a little more forgiving than with the previous year's fourth quarter.
Yeah.
But 90% drop that's bad.
That is That's one of those stories where you read the headline and before you publish it, you just make really sure that it's 90 and not 9.
Yeah.
All right. Well, our next most popular story. 50-car train derailment causes big fire and evacuations. Last Friday, some 50 cars derailed in a fiery crash in Ohio near the Pennsylvania state line. Rail operator Norfolk Southern said there were no injuries to the crew, residents, or first responders. However, officials worked feverishly to prevent any major explosions from the smoldering wreckage. The Ohio National Guard was called in to help evacuate the nearby village of East Palestine. And it started out as a recommendation, but then anyone within a 1-mile radius of the site had to get out of town. Officials said a potential explosion could have launched deadly shrapnel as far as a mile, and there was a risk of, quote, the potential of a catastrophic tanker failure after a, quote, drastic temperature change was observed in that rail car. The train was carrying a variety of products from Madison, Illinois to Conway, Pennsylvania. The cause of the crash was a mechanical issue with a rail car axle, and the 3-member train crew received an alert about the mechanical defect shortly before the derailment. An investigative report is expected in a month or so. 20 of the more than 100 cars on the train were classified as carrying hazardous materials, but only 10 of those 20 derailed. 5 of the cars were carrying vinyl chloride, which is used to make polyvinyl chloride hard plastic resin in a variety of plastic products. It's associated with a number of cancers. Anna, I don't know what it takes to get people out of town sometimes, but catastrophic tanker failure would do it for me. Shrapnel launching a mile would do it for me. Also, is there anything that can be done to prevent similar things going forward? I mean, I know that we're putting more electronics, more safety features into these rail cars, but even though this one had some on this particular train had some on board, they didn't have enough time to respond.
Yeah, to say that they received an alert shortly before the derailment, I think if they had time or ability to stop that from happening, they would have, right? So
does that mean they received a text message like right before? Hey, let me check. I got something on my phone. It's from my boss. Hey, guys.
Yeah, I know. I think to me it shows that even alongside the advancements in technology that are being applied to these types of systems, it's been pretty well publicized that the rail industry is actively trying to cut personnel on those trains themselves. So this is, I think, like rarely do we see in such stark relief the results of what could be a lack of workers here. I don't know if that's relevant in this specific case or not, but I think it raises a lot of interesting questions. It's not in the case of rail where these companies are dealing with trying to fill roles and they're in a pinch because they can't get enough workers, like a lot of companies are dealing with. They're like actively trying to trim down the teams with the argument that these trains are so advanced that they can operate without extra people to supervise. And that's something that rail workers and unions have really been vocally opposing. According to a report following this incident, the AP said that rail unions believe the industry has gotten riskier in recent years after widespread job cuts have left workers spread thin. So I looked into that a little bit. Between 2017 and 2021, more than 22% of the jobs at Union Pacific, CSX, and Norfolk Southern were eliminated based on an operational methodology they're using called precision scheduled railroading, which is basically a methodology that focuses on maintaining regular schedules and also cutting costs. Opponents are arguing both tenets make it less safe because the regular schedules make it harder for thorough maintenance to take place because the trains don't sit as long. And the cost cuts of people are eliminating checks and balances, and they're running so lean that they can't adequately react to variability. To me, that seems like it could apply in this case. Whether or not that's what we're seeing here, I don't know. But opponents to this precision scheduled railroading, they point to an increase in accidents and derailments in recent years and say that is why. So depending on your perspective, this is either isolated or perhaps an indicator of a larger problem to do with overambitious cost reductions at the expense of safety. We've seen it before.
Well, because this was an axle problem, one thing that really stuck out to me was that because of the cuts, they said on average they can inspect the cars. They used to be able to inspect the cars for 2 minutes per car, and that's been cut to 45 seconds.
Yeah,
and that, I mean, to cut it in more than half. I mean, I don't know how in depth these inspections are, but to cut them by more than half and have something that is probably maybe not very visible, but I mean, I'm assuming you're looking at the axles of everyone.
We would hope, right? Yeah.
I mean, where were you going to start? Start at the wheels. But I don't know. That was something that really stood out to me. Ben, when you were looking at this story, what were your thoughts when it came to some of the cutbacks that we've seen both in labor and when it comes to potential safety?
Well, yeah, it just seems like this is something that you would want to invest in. Even with the cost cutting, it still seems like one of the safest ways to transport, hazardous materials and lots of other stuff, right? And to see these cuts and to see the uptick in accidents, derailments, right? And to know that a lot of these railways are almost always passing through populated areas, highly populated areas. So I mean, one accident in the wrong place could be catastrophic. Right. So I just don't understand the cuts. I don't see where the logic meets on this one.
Well, and it could be just scale, because according to the AP, the railroads are still investing about $24 billion a year in maintaining and improving the tracks to help prevent these problems. But still, I mean, I know that while that seems like a pretty substantial number, there's a lot of track in the United States to take care of. And while the railroad industry is still regarded as the safest option, maybe work on keeping that way rather than being like, no, we got quite a lead. We can cut into that a little bit.
Well, yeah, and don't you think that people might be concerned if they really knew a little bit more about how the rail industry is just kind of quietly trying to cut? Like they were proposing cutting down to one person.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because everything was so automated, and the rail workers were really up in arms because they were like, we would be terrified to be in that train just completely by ourselves and no one else to. And I don't think people who live in these areas, these populated areas, as Ben mentioned, knowing that hazardous chemicals are being transported through there, would feel really safe knowing that there's one person has a seizure and no one's on the train anymore. I don't know. I mean, I know that there's a lot of automated features that help those trains operate, but I think
but it obviously didn't work.
Having some checks there would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. And highly publicized stories like this and the images that were shared everywhere in the video. I mean, the huge fire, the gigantic smoke cloud. Yeah. And then the talk of, shrapnel flying and poison gas and stuff like that. I mean, I grew up, my high school was like a block from the train tracks. It was right next to the football field. We tolerated the noise. Yeah. But beyond that, I don't think anybody ever thought there's a really good chance we'll be hit by flying metal pieces. Yeah. Or poisoned.
Yeah. Well, see, I think that's part of it is that railroads are everywhere. So, I mean, where I live now, the train doesn't go until late at night. But if you're listening, you can hear it go through. We're close enough. But this particular accident, they were interviewing residents and they were thinking about selling their houses to try and get away from rail, but it is everywhere. So, and I think because it's such a legacy form of transportation and supply chain that people think it's inherently safer than maybe it is. But where are you going to go? Where are you going to go that there's no rail? The evacuation covered nearly half of the town's 4,900 residents. But most of those people were able to leave the emergency shelters by Sunday, so 3 days later. As we said, it is one of the safest options for transporting goods, and federal data shows accidents involving hazardous materials are exceedingly rare. While, Anna, as to your point, you said that the rail unions believe the industry has gotten riskier. They think that not just the widespread cuts, but also what I was talking about, cuts in time, it's just been sort of snowballing. It's been going in the wrong direction for a long time. The other one was that it wasn't just that the vinyl I was talking about, but the cars involved in the crash also carried butyl acrylate and residue benzene, as well as wheat, plastic pellets, and malt liquors, so maybe a positive, and lube oil. So it just a terrible mess as well. And Ben, to your point, the pictures in the video were harrowing. It's kind of incredible that no one was injured in this entire situation, right?
Yeah. I mean, burning like a train cars full of toxic cancer-causing chemicals, though, we don't really know what the impact of that is. I feel like it's easy for us to be like, it's gone now, but
yeah, we can't see the clouds.
I can't see it.
Yeah,
it went to space.
He's not gonna do great, but
everything is gonna be fine. Well, there's an update from Jeff, who is listening to us live. Jeff, it's unfortunate to say, is in some pretty rough conditions right now. It looks like he's stranded somewhere in the Arctic near some sort of body of water that has been penetrated with all these holes. So they must not be structurally sound, protected from the elements only by what can be, a rickety tent. And it looks like the only thing that he has to survive is some sort of malt beverage of his own. So hopefully Jeff's going to make it.
Good luck out there, Jeff.
Yeah. Should we continue if Jeff's in danger?
I mean, I think it's what he would want.
Ben can't wait to get out of here.
It's what he would want.
Right? Can we please move along?
You know what? We should probably just wrap this up. Yeah. Let's go search for Jeff.
Yep. Let's call it a day.
Oh, well, Jeff, hope actually you get some food out of there as well. Our most popular story this week: a concept super yacht could, quote, fly at unprecedented speeds. Lazzarini Design Studio is awesome. The Italian firm that gave us the electric super limo, a UFO-shaped houseboat, and a flying city in the shape of a turtle has unveiled the Plectrum, a 240-foot super yacht. The designers were inspired by the vessels from the famed America's Cup sailing race, with designs that date back to the mid-1960s. The Plectrum would more than triple the size of those ultra-fast sailboats. The renderings show a sleek orange vessel with a helipad and a room to stow a smaller boat, as well as room for a vehicle. It has the basic amenities. The vessel, made of carbon fiber composite materials, features a foil system that can expand from resting width of 50 feet to more than 65 feet and effectively lift the main structure out of the water at high speeds. 3 hydrogen-powered engines can together reach a top speed of 75 knots or 86 miles per hour, which is much faster than any yacht of similar size. Anna, I know that there's been a lot of super yacht talk lately, but let's focus for a minute on Lazzarini Design Studio and some of the very inventive and creative work that comes out of that studio, which continues to turn heads and, you know, push the envelope forward a little bit, if for only, you know, gross ways to spend incredible amounts of money.
You don't get to tell me what to focus on. I will focus on something entirely different.
Focus on the industrial design and not the sick wealth accumulation it would take to afford such a thing.
Did you know that plectrum is like a fancy word for what a guitar pick is?
I did, yeah. Oh, you did? That was my closer.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And it's an implement for plucking string.
Yeah.
And when I looked it up, I'm like, so is a guitar pick?
Yeah, it's like the name. It doesn't even sound cool, but
plectrum.
It sounds like a surgical instrument. I just not like.
Yeah, step aboard the plectrum.
Anna's the one invited aboard a super yacht, and then when Johnny Billionaire says like step aboard plectrum, you just are laughing so hard you can't possibly.
I just
board.
like turn around.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Nope.
Can I take the helicopter home?
Okay, so I enjoyed this story. It's like it's very cool to look at, right? I loved the bright orange. It was just it was fun to see. I was a little surprised when I saw the comments on this post on our website because everyone was pretty much like, "This is cool," and there wasn't even that much blowback on the $87 million price tag. Some people were like, well, $87 million kind of makes sense.
Seems
if you
reasonable.
if you look at this caliber of luxury item. The reason I was surprised is because many of you might remember that we covered another super yacht quite extensively about 8-10 months ago. It was being created in the Netherlands, and it was so big that the local leaders were considering temporarily dismantling a historic bridge in order to get it out of the harbor. Mm-hmm. The owner of that boat, you may recall, is
what was his name again?
Is Jeff Bezos. And people had a lot of choice words about that whole fiasco. Even local boat protesters.
Yeah,
I don't know how else to characterize them.
Yeah. Old Jeffy Amazon.
They staged a demonstration, or they were going to, where there was about 5,000 people who had signed a petition pledging to hurl rotten eggs at the boat when it sailed past the bridge on its way out. People were pissed about this boat. Mm-hmm. So I guess my conclusion here is that people don't object to super yachts in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. They just hate rich people. Am I wrong about this? Like they don't hate the yacht, they just hate the owner?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. No, but I mean, I think that was also very unique to, we need to dismantle your legacy infrastructure to get this giant, symbol of super wealth to a large body of water. I think that's part of it. And maybe Lazzarini learned from those mistakes, and that's why it can expand, it can get skinny for those pesky
Maybe it's a more likable super yacht. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's a lot less expensive. Bezos was like $500 million. So I get how that's like bananas, but let's be real, none of this is necessary. So I don't know. I guess I think like even an $87 million yacht is cool in abstraction. And then until like Elon Musk buys it or Leonardo DiCaprio does, and then everyone's like, screw you, buddy.
No, I think that's the biggest point is that these are cool renderings that would cost $85 million. When you see the realization of that in your local waterway, you start to think a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, in our local lakes, like people rage against like wake boats. You know what I mean? Like I can't imagine seeing this and being like, "You do you," like from my like kayak. I don't know. I don't think people in real life are like, yeah, great. I don't know.
Our lakes are simpler. You know, you get a 2-story booze cruise out there, everyone's fine.
Yeah.
It gets any bigger, and people are going to start asking questions.
Exactly.
Ben, we've been covering Lazzarini before, and while I would like to argue the idea of living on a UFO-shaped houseboat or living in a floating city the shape of a turtle, let's get back to some of the incredible design work behind the super yacht, or again, you can just go after oligarchs. What did you think when you saw the super yacht, particularly the technology when it comes to lifting it out of the water?
Yeah, the hydrofoil.
The hydrofoil,
right? Yeah. And that's interesting. But I like to think of super yachting. I like to imagine it as a leisurely pastime. You know, it's kind of like a pontoon boat, but for the mega rich. Right?
Yeah.
So is there a need to go 86 miles per hour? And you know, if you're going to make this investment, don't you just want to cruise and show it off? Do you need to get out of there that fast? I mean,
I think
how fast did the
Diamond
DeLorean
Heist.
need to go to travel through time?
It wouldn't make it. I don't think so. It was 88, right?
Right, but it's getting close.
This one can't go through time.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's nice because it is a good pairing of your pontoon boat and maybe a cigarette boat. You know, you're getting 2 in 1. So really, they're saving money.
But to
That
Ben's
is
point,
a whole lot of boat to be controlling at 86 miles per hour, though, too.
Yeah, what if
like,
you
if you're
like,
just
flip that
like
thing?
hitting the marina at 90 and
Yeah. So if a super yacht is the super wealthy's pontoon boat, does it still play Jimmy Buffett?
yes,
Yeah.
Every boat does.
Yeah.
I don't think you have a choice.
It
No.
comes. I mean, that's the one detail they left out of here is that, you know, Jimmy Buffett's entire library comes
Yeah.
stock.
Yeah, he plays a show on.
Oh, yeah, he's on it.
He's
What are we
on
talking
it,
about?
yeah.
His album.
Like-
once a month, whether you want it or not.
No, Ben, to your point though, if like you're in a rush, you have a helipad, you just hop in that helicopter and get to your 5:30 reservation or whatever you got to be at. 5:30.
So it's clearly an
Early
elderly.
The
You got
Golden
to get the
Girls
early bird special.
Yeah.
have moved on to this super yacht.
Yeah, it's you know it's fast, but I guess it's not like completely unheard of for a yacht to go that fast. I was looking it up, and was it Oxyzen Yachting? They had a list of the fastest yachts in the world, and the World Is Not Enough, which is a 42-meter super yacht, and Phoners, which is a weirder name. But that's a 41-meter boat, which has 3 Rolls-Royce 6,700 horsepower gas turbines in it. Those can both hit 70 knots, but they're not nearly as large as this boat.
Okay. I think that it would be interesting to see what this was renamed by the owner, because, you know, you see a super yacht out there called The World Is Not Enough, and you kind of understand the mentality it takes to acquire such wealth.
Yeah. I mean, I can picture the movie. I'm like, this makes sense. But Phoners, I was like,
Phoners.
what's with Phoners?
It's the person who started Nokia or something. Just like, you want to come aboard my phone?
Yeah.
Or my yacht, Phoners. The best, I probably shared it before on this podcast, but my favorite boat name of all time was my godfather's. He, after becoming newly single, bought a huge boat and just named it No More Naggin'. And you know what? We're on like No More Naggin' 3, and I love it every time. It's like a new boat, just a different number. I'm like, stick with the classics.
Still no nagging.
Yeah. Okay, so looking at it strictly from a design perspective, it's interesting how they pulled out all the stops. The one thing that always seems excessive to me on a watercraft is when it has a pool on board. That's the one thing I struggle to get over. But I guess it makes sense. You know, you need an infinity pool aboard your super yacht in the ocean.
No sharks in that pool.
No sharks in that pool. You know, it does have a very convenient garage, so you don't have to worry about where to store your car when you're on your yacht. That's nice.
When you hit 86 in the super yacht, does all your water in your pool just woof out the back?
I mean, it has to, right? It's like when people turn their pickup trucks into hot tubs, and you're like, let's talk logistics here for a second.
Yeah, do you have a lid for that?
Everyone's gonna die. Going back to the hydrofoil tech, I really think that's cool how it lifts out of the water. But I mean, I've also seen it, hydrofoil kayaks and surfboards. Those were the things I thought were cool because, you know, it's being somebody who likes to kayak, knowing what it takes to get enough force for those foils to lift it out of the water is pretty incredible. So it's just a really interesting technology, really cool technology, how people stopped thinking about how things can float in the water and think how they can fly above the water. Really cool tech that didn't necessarily start with a super yacht.
The thing that leads to the thing is what you're saying.
That is not what I'm saying.
I think it is.
That is not. That thought can be had alone.
Jeff.
On the ice.
Jeff's watching.
There we go. But yeah, these hydrofoils are essentially underwater wings that push it out of the water. But it does have to be going 15 knots so it can lift out of the water, which is a little over 17 miles per hour. My takeaway thought, the other thing was that this mentioned that it's modeled after vessels from the America's Cup sailing race, but then mentioned that the designs date back to the mid-60s. Well, this one was specifically modeled after Prada's 2023 model. So we're not really like dipping back into the legacy of boating here. And I had mentioned before, I can't wait for this thing to get confiscated from an oligarch. I think that's going to be a big day.
They'll never catch him though.
No.
Yeah,
It's the fastest boat in the world.
They never catch them. They're always, they think they're untouchable. So it'll just be anchored off of some body of water close to the States and it'll be like, no, we're taking this now.
Yeah, the plectrum belongs to us now.
What if they buy it and just rename it Guitar Pick? Just like, man, I thought you were uncool before, and then you named your boat Guitar Pick. I'm out. I'm sorry. All right, well, before we move on to, in case you missed it, the stories that maybe weren't as popular with our readers online, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward, we have another word from our sponsor, Unit 202 Productions.
If you aren't creating video content for your business, you're missing out. Why is video so important? Increase conversions, increase email marketing click-through rates, improve SEO, build trust, help explain complex subjects and equipment, and improve social media engagement. How many of you view video content on a daily basis? Isn't it time people start viewing some of yours? Promote your brand with Unit 202. Let's get to work.
And we're back with In Case You Missed It. The stories, not so popular, but pretty important. Ben, I'd like to start with you this week. What is your In Case You Missed It?
My In Case You Missed It is a story we ran this week called 15 million people live under the threat of glacial floods, and it's based on a study from Nature Communications. And what the headline doesn't necessarily convey is just how serious these floods are. You hear the term glacial flood, it just sounds like a slow flood, right? Yeah. A slow-moving flood. But what it is actually about is a glacial outburst flood. And that's like, there was one in Peru in 1941, and it may have killed as many as 6,000 people. There was another in British Columbia, and it caused a 330-foot high tsunami. And it just sounds like a crazy, scary flood. Like, that's not the type of flood I expect to see in my neck of the woods.
Flood, yeah.
Yeah. And, if a regular flood can be hugely disruptive to the supply chain, anything else. This seems like crazy. And while the researchers have suggested that climate change hasn't exactly made the floods more frequent, but but they're saying that as the glaciers shrink, more water is being fed into these glacial lakes and making the potential floods more dangerous. So it seems like a serious problem.
Yeah. So this is a flood from when a lake created by a glacier bursts, right? Or is it, that's how it happens?
Yeah, I believe so. These are lakes that are fed by glaciers.
Right.
And so
then the lake fails, and then that's what causes the flooding.
Right.
Okay. So it's like what happened up in, was it Lake Delton in Wisconsin? What happened there where the lake failed and just flooded the entire community?
And the lake was empty for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the same.
I don't know. I didn't have a chance to read this, so I'm interested to learn more about like a glacial flood outburst, because that seems like something you want to make sure you're protected from.
Right. And it's not necessarily something that could happen around here. Okay. So maybe it's not top of mind for us, but it just seems like this is a natural disaster that wasn't really on my radar before, but it sounds serious and kind of scary.
Yeah. It's always good to add another natural disaster to your already heightened anxiety for the day.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm always looking for them. So if you got them, send them in, please. Yeah.
That's ben@in.com with your new natural disaster.
Yep, got it.
Anna, any thoughts about the crippling fear associated with glacial floods and the 15 million people that live under the threat of them?
Yeah, that's like, I saw this article as well, and it's really terrifying. Worse so, I think, because the people that are most at risk tend to be living in areas that maybe don't get as much support. You're looking at like rural India and Pakistan and the Himalayas. So when people are living in these areas, they don't necessarily have a way to get out of there. And it doesn't sound like you necessarily get very much time. So yeah, pretty scary stuff. I think the silver lining in, obviously you mentioned anxiety, but this like heightened awareness that people have around climate and weather and natural disasters right now. At a minimum, at least, I think more work is being done to address some of this stuff. People are taking it really seriously. The scientific community is pretty much in a consensus point here, saying that this stuff is, a lot of it's being caused by the things that we're doing. People are trying to, there's been some philanthropy around helping fund some of this stuff. So hopefully there's smart people out there that are going to help.
Yeah. Is this something that we can get ahead of by either structurally improving the dams or possibly diverting water? Or is it just kind of, unless things slow down, this is going to continue to happen?
Yeah, I think it's one of those where, unless we stop warming up, this is just going to occur. It already occurs, but it just could magnify the problem.
Occur with greater frequency. My goodness. All right. Well, Anna, you're In Case You Missed It this week.
All right. So the article I chose this week was based on a Gallup poll that cites a stat that says that just 2 in 10 U.S. employees have a work best friend.
We're going from like
just
different sides here.
Completely
right.
different topic.
Natural disaster to personal disaster.
No segue, friends. No friends. I thought it was very timely, this study. So just 2 in 10 adult U.S. employees say they definitely have a best friend at work, according to a quarterly Gallup survey done in June of 2022. That percentage has dropped by several points since pre-pandemic. And Gallup said that there was no such change for workers 35 and up, but those under that age range are really seeing a drop in friendship in the workplace. Jim Harder, who is the researcher here, basically said that, quote, "We're seeing in the data that younger people in general are feeling more disconnected from their workplaces." Gallup says that it's found a strong link between workers with best friends on the job and profitability, safety, inventory control, and of course, retention. Some of these I think are evident, but the part about inventory control, basically that people maybe steal less when they have a work best friend, is like, astonishing, but kind of makes sense when you think about it. You know, if you care about those around you, if you feel culturally embedded in your workplace, then you're far more likely maybe to not consider that to be a victimless crime. I don't know. Yeah. That's all I can add. But I thought that was an interesting point. I attended a presentation recently where a CEO on a panel got super real about hating remote work and how he didn't believe that it was good for people, and he wasn't going to support it. You know, unfortunately, I think this kind of stuff, these studies like put a finer point on that type of argument. I personally don't think that remote work is the problem necessarily. I think it needs to be part of the equation, but taking into account employees' needs. And I think that means like there's going to be employees who benefit from remote and those who benefit from on-site, and they need to be a part of the discussion in deciding like who goes where. Yeah. We know based on research that most people, even Gen Z, don't want to work full-time remote. Most people don't. Yeah. So hybrid is a good approach. I think that helps you continue to nurture a culture face-to-face. But I'd say, secondly, businesses need to remember that just because remote work is now a part of so many workplaces, that doesn't mean that everything you did before to build team and culture can be skipped, or that it doesn't need to be modified to fit this new normal that you have. So make it a monthly occurrence to have people on site for lunch and a team meeting or something. Or
on site, not those digital Zoom happy
Nobody
hours.
wants to do a Zoom happy hour. No. That's the most awful idea that anyone ever had. It should never have been replicated.
How to make sure you don't have a work best friend is force them to do a digital happy hour.
Right, but you can keep like the parties and the charitable efforts where you guys go pick up trash. You can get people, like I said, once a month you buy everybody pizza. You come in and everyone gets to connect. You can and should still do all that stuff, because because someone is remote doesn't mean that you can ignore them and then just get salty when they're not engaged. It's really preventative effort too on these companies to make sure these people don't quit, because if they don't feel like they have a team and they don't feel like they have a buddy, it's much easier for them to throw in the towel there.
I'd like to ask a Jeff question here.
Yeah.
Is this a generational problem? Just because we know that generationally, workers now are more interested in having their set hours and only working in that window. Yeah. They don't want to have relationships with workers outside of that window. So the likelihood that they would have a work bestie seems less likely.
I think generationally, so they said that the change was most apparent in 35 and under. It didn't really change for 35 and up. I do think that age group is more driving remote work. They're asking for it. They're requiring it in order to consider a job. So I think you are getting more of those folks in that, you know, those of us who are like used to being at the office. A lot of people, I think in our age range and up, they do it. You know, like that's what they're used to, and they just do it.
But they're also used to the sort of intangible benefits of it. Because I mean, I do think of the people that work almost 100% remote, and it's hard for me to think of really close connections that they have with work associates, just because it's hard to develop that relationship with Zoom and phone calls.
Yeah, true. But I do also think that you could run a study alongside this, that is how many people quit their jobs because their commute is too long, or because they don't have enough time at home with their families. They can't get home in time to see their kids before they have to go to bed. They can't make healthy food at home because they spend too much time at their office. Like, that would also show, I think, you know, that there's some challenges to having people in the office as well. Yeah. So I think it's a mixed bag, honestly. But my overall point is that workplaces need to, if they're going to offer hybrid and they're going to offer remote, which a lot, you know, more than half of companies since the pandemic now are. Yeah. They have to remember that there's more to it than just giving somebody a laptop and letting them go, because you could have an unintended consequence there of somebody who just over time becomes disengaged. You can't just leave them on an island and never, you know, invite them back to have some pizza.
Yeah, I can speak to this from experience. I spent 6 years working from home. We had an office, but our headquarters was in DC, so I didn't go there. because I didn't want to.
Yeah.
That's a long way.
Too far.
Yeah, that's a long way to go to a holiday party with a lot of people you don't know.
Yeah.
We had a small team, but I rarely ever saw any of them in person. It was all, over Teams, which is just like a less fun Zoom.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but it is very isolating. And it could just be because of my age range, but I think it takes a toll on your mental health when you work alone for an extended period of time, and if you're in a somewhat creative field, that also can be a disadvantage, I think, too. Without anybody to kind of bounce ideas off of.
Yeah.
My work best friend was my dog.
Yeah.
And he had no input.
But he was great. No?
Yeah.
Maybe not the best listener, but a good companion.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he's really cool. I'm not. Sorry, Moses. I'm not. I'm not insulting you wherever you are. But yeah, it was. It got to be to the point where it was like I need to go back to an office just to make sure I can still talk to people.
Yeah.
And then they put you on a podcast panel that you absolutely
dive right in.
Regret ever agreeing to.
No, but so other than, did you have any other opportunities? Did the previous company try it all, or did they kind of embrace the fact that they can find remote workers from across the states or maybe even globally and just try and keep them together as long as they could as a team, or do any kind of real team building?
Yeah, I think there was some team building, but it's hard to kind of rally everybody. And like you said, we were kind of based all across the country. So some people would be starting the day on Pacific time, and some on Eastern, and some of us in between. So we were all kind of at different points. So the idea of like a digital happy hour is just that's off the table. It's like, who's
when is it happy hour?
Who's 4:30 are we going to choose? Like,
oh, you go East Coast, and then everyone on the Pacific is just like, sounds great to me.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
No, it's so Anna, are you proposing some sort of not only getting more people into the office, but some sort of speed dating type scenario where everyone has to meet everyone to find that work best friend?
I don't know if you were listening to what I said, because not even close. Nothing of that sort in any way.
Okay, I'm just curious. And I mean, the other name for industrial media was going to be 15 Best Friends. So we're lucky that we all work together.
We are, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, no. In case you missed it this week, is about Britishvolt EV, because I can't leave it alone. A new Lifeline is going to prevent the demise of Britishvolt's EV factory. Britishvolt lives. Remember Britishvolt, the all-in gigafactory that was going to produce 30 gigawatt hours worth of batteries and serve as the backbone of UK EVs, but then essentially filed bankruptcy and laid off most of its staff last month? It lives. The project was backed by $4.6 billion from private and public sources, but it still struggled to curb spending while attempting to raise more funds. Well, enter Australian company Recharge Industries. Seems like a natural fit. The company is buying Britishvolt's business and assets and plans to move forward with the ambitious plant. Recharge Industries plans to build lithium-ion batteries that are free of materials sourced from Russia or China in an attempt to reduce supply chain risks. This is according to Car Scoops. I chose this story, Anna and Ben, because as we covered Britishvolt, it just seemed like there was no greater slam dunk of lights out, never going to happen again as Britishvolt. And then it lives on. I couldn't believe it. It was actually... and we'll see, because they were purchased by another startup, so we'll see. But it was sometimes when we've covered the story, these stories, whether it be Lightyear a couple weeks ago or Sono, and there seem to be these lifelines, or how Sono is trying to like string it along just to see if they can find an investor. Sometimes, as unlikely as it seems, it can happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it was sort of funny because every week we have a new update. You know what I mean? Like, and I thought that this was completely dead in the water, as did you, I think, because even when it was like looking like it was going to go that way, we're like, okay, for sure, this does not work. But I think the most interesting thing I took away from this was about Recharge saying that they wanted to build batteries that were free of materials sourced from China or Russia to attempt to reduce supply chain risks. I mean, that does make a fair bit of sense here to think like, okay, you have this sort of greenfield operation in the UK. You know where it's coming from. And I know that there's a lot of challenges in the foreseeable future in terms of getting those batteries made and not having to rely on a supply chain that's, you know, again, conflict laden, very disrupted. You know, nobody wants to go through the China factory shutdowns via the COVID-0 policy again. Like, you know, that was just so disruptive to everyone. So you can kind of see why this is appealing for somebody to take this on.
I believe that when the last time we covered this, Ben, I was kind of joking about how sometimes when these companies go under, it's a real opportunity to get a really big project for pennies on the dollar. And I'm really interested to see what they paid for this thing, because I don't even think it's pennies on the dollar. I think it's like fractions of pennies on the dollar when it comes to what they're actually going to get versus what was already been invested in there.
So you think they swooped in and got a deal?
I think so. Well, I think so, especially because but it is a startup. So Recharge is founded by this guy, David Collard, who launched the company in November 2020. And then Recharge Production, which is a subsidiary, is essentially developing the exact same plant in Australia. So it kind of seemed like a really perfect fit. And maybe that doesn't always exist. But yeah, I think Recharge saw this and they're just like, yeah, we can make two.
Do we know who's further along in their development? Recharge or Britishvolt?
I think Recharge is further along in development because it sounded like they already had materials to start like building the plants. I think that Australia is a little bit further along. I'm not certain though. And I mean, definitely if you're trying to build two massive plants at the same time, you know, maybe it's easier to swing a deal when you're getting materials for, I don't know, essentially $10 billion in plants. But
this is nice. Yeah, it's a nice story. Whenever something is dead and then it's not anymore, it's cool.
Well,
that's as simply as I can put it.
That is. Well, like that. Oh my goodness, never. I was gonna say like the old woman they just found at the morgue, and then she was still alive.
Oh yeah, you're right. That's not cool.
No, like, it was cool. She's alive,
but
she's
they put her in the bag. Yeah,
I mean,
that wasn't cool.
Yeah,
well, okay.
She passed away like later that day. She's not.
Oh, sorry. I did not read the whole story.
Yep.
So apologies. Back to Britishvolt. It's another thing where it might not be a lesson well learned, because the other part that we talked about was when a government and a community puts all of their eggs into one basket and it goes under. Well, it looks like there is a potential for a lifeline. We'll see what happens next.
Yeah.
All right. Final thoughts. Mine's probably going to be an apology to the family. Anna, before we get out of here this week, what's your final thought?
All right. So I know that I had mentioned a couple weeks back about my daughter who turned 8 this week having her birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese, and how we could handle the Ticket Blaster ticket machine to our advantage. We watched some YouTube videos and it was not very effective. We got like 10 extra tickets. So just a heads up. Thanks for everyone's input, but no.
It didn't pan out.
Yeah. But the second thing I want to say about Chuck E. Cheese, for any of you 80s kids who used to go there when it was Showbiz Pizza for birthday parties, going back today, they have digitized the screen for the performances. There's no more animatronic. They took the stage out. There's no more animatronic singing. And
sad. Are they animated?
They're just like kind of like puppets on a video on a big digital screen. And then Chuck E. Cheese came out in a costume, right? But I was super bummed when I realized there was not going to be a performance, because I paid for a performance and,
right?
and I did not get it. Yeah.
No, that was oh man, I'm gonna miss that. My brothers were so terrified of those things. I loved every time they came out.
I know kids are terrified of them. I was as well, so I don't know what. Maybe it wouldn't have been great, but
there's a documentary I think about people that own the full like Rock-afire Explosion pizza band from Showbiz.
Okay.
And they still have them and they keep them in working order.
That's
and
good.
They program them to play like modern songs, and it's really weird, but super cool too.
Sounds pretty awesome.
That needs to live on. And I thought the form was pretty good in the ticket booth. It's an overwhelming sensory overload kind of experience.
She was definitely shell shocked. There was these goggles that they gave her that were like very ill fitting, so she spent a lot of time just trying to keep them on, and then tickets flying, and she's very small, so she had fun though, so that was the important part.
Yeah, she didn't panic.
No, she didn't. No.
And at least the wind tunnel didn't like lift her up.
No.
My final thought this week starts with I apologize for any insensitivity towards that family or the story regarding the woman in the morgue. I apologize for that. And also I had a chance to travel to Anaheim this week, which was, again, it was nice to get back on the road and see some friends and coworkers that I haven't run into in a long time. I would say that the overall consensus is that things are starting to pick up a little bit more when it comes to trade show traffic, the quality of trade show traffic. Don't get me wrong. There are still all the legacy excuses that everyone has for being upset at a trade show, just like from the shoes to the walking to the quality of leads to how much it costs to get the lead. All of those standard gripes are still there, alive and well. But, it seems like people are kind of excited to get back out there. And it was the first trade show I've gone to that seemed like the same as it was pre-COVID. So I got to meet with, Brian at KHK, Jen at Master Control, and a lot of other people that, it was just good to catch up with. Mm-hmm. And it's sometimes funny because, I went there last year and was able to catch up with a lot of people, but some people I haven't seen since before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And they're just like, they're married and now I have kids, and it's just like, how you want to catch up? It's like, I really don't have the time. Mm-hmm. Just like, let's just link in or something and go through the feed. We'll get you up to speed. But no, it was, I enjoy getting on the road. We're not planning on traveling as much as we did pre-pandemic, but I do really see a value in getting out into the industry, meeting on an individual basis, and kind of really just immersing yourself in the latest things going on. Ben, what's your final thought this week?
My final thought is about The Last of Us. I've been watching it. It's on HBO. It's great. I highly recommend it. I played the first game when it came out too, and at the time when the game came out, I don't remember there being as much cordyceps talk.
Okay.
And now it feels like there's a lot, and it's scary. It scares me to think about it. And I don't want a fungus to take over my brain and turn me into a mushroom monster. But the point is, I still eat mushrooms, but I don't really trust them anymore.
So do you find yourself like not eating raw mushrooms and just really overcooking them? I don't know what kind of adjustments I need to fully make. That's still kind of a work in progress, but it's like, if people want to order a sausage and mushroom pizza, I'm like, I don't know. Do you want to play Mario Kart? I used to take Toad, but now I'm not so sure about that guy. If there's ever a person that's going to be the hero of the cordyceps apocalypse, Toad will reign supreme and be there to rescue us all.
I hope, but I'm skeptical. Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying. I've never thought this much about fungus, and it worries me.
I want to know, when that first episode debuted, what was the first, maybe 5 or 10 minutes is the scientist setting the table as to what a cordyceps is. I want to see, and I'm sure it's out there, what the Google data shows from people. Because I was immediately like, there's no way that's real, right? Oh my God, it's real.
It's real.
It's real. And they slowly consume the host from the inside until there's nothing left.
Yep.
So you're saying you're anti-cordyceps?
Yeah, I don't want that, and it's sad that it's turned me kind of skeptical of all mushrooms, but it has.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm 4 episodes in too, and I've never been heavier into mushrooms. Maybe I've already been drawn to the other side. Like it's already.
You've been cordyceps.
I've been cordyceps. Yeah. It's like, what if I lose the tingling in the fingers or something? If that goes first. Well, I know that Jeff's out this week. Do we have anything with the podcast poll, or are we just putting a pin in that until next week?
Oh boy, I am on the spot. Yeah.
No, all right. No, okay. So
nobody told Ben.
Yeah. Jeff apparently
there could be.
Jeff went and he found that fishing spot before having the full conversation with Ben. So it turns out we're going to have our podcast poll continue on through to the next week. And I believe, was it the union question that we asked last week?
No.
Yeah. Would you join or advise? Oh, no, that wasn't
that. That may be it.
Oh, okay. You know what? It's the same as last week. So whatever last week's was.
Have you ever looked the other way on a known safety issue? Isn't that the question?
Yeah, because of the duct tape deal, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you ever looked the other way on a known safety issue?
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll get an email out to you. Oh, and if so, why? So please continue to, if you haven't already, participate with the podcast polling question. If we read it on air next week, I think you get a shirt, or I don't even know what we're working on next, but I'm sure it'll be fine. We'll get a weather vane. All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Ben, David, or Anna at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily and weekly newsletters. Make sure that you get it delivered to your inbox first. Also, make sure to subscribe to us at IN Magazine on YouTube so you get a notification when we go live and you can join us for the live podcast. Jeff, hope you're catching anything more than cold and you don't come home and say, did a lot of fishing, not a lot of catching. And before we get out of here, Seth says, nice work to all.
Hi, Seth.
And I'm sure
Thanks,
he
buddy.
says, miss you, Jeff. No, thanks for hanging out, Seth. We appreciate it. All right. For Ben Munson, Anna Wells, and Jeff, who's on some lake somewhere in northern Wisconsin, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Today in Manufacturing podcast.